So I would love to chat about, we know AI is not going away, right? It's everywhere in our everyday lives. So what are some positive impacts that you're seeing and positive trends within AI that you're excited about?
Well, my Spotify list is better.
Yeah, there you go. That's true. Yep.
That's hard to follow. I mean, I think if we go forward in a ethical, constructive way, there are some positives that we can foresee, like for performers, if it's done correctly with consent, compensation, and control. A performer could potentially be in multiple projects at once that are being done, around the world, which has the benefit of, increasing their income potentially. It can also maybe help open doors for performers that have maybe some accessibility issues, performers living with disabilities or deaf performers. It can also potentially make things a bit safer for our stunt performers. So there are some good things.
For sure.
I would say that AI can take tasks but shouldn't be taking jobs, right? Let it do tasks but not the jobs.
I think, maximizing efficiencies, right? That's what good technology is meant to do for humans, not to replace us, but to allow us or help us do sort of automate, lower decision-making processes. So that we can actually elevate and worry about the bigger issues that involve empathy and decision-making and actually, analyzing the data, right? So it's streamlining or the data or, maximizing efficiencies for us in the entertainment industry is the right way to go about it. And certainly on the production side, that could mean, essentially making things more cost efficient, which in this market, we do need to make productions in a more cost efficient manner. And so like Teza says, it's really about, I wish that there were 5 of me, and if digital replicas can do that for talent, right, in a way that is fair and ethical, that compensates them, and that maximizes efficiencies for the producers, it's a win-win situation. So like with any new technology, it's about legislating to prevent the ills and focusing on the goods.
Absolutely. And how, what are you seeing in your different sections within the entertainment industry, how artists are able to protect their creativity and hold on to their integrity as artists, but able to utilize AI in different capacities? Dun, dun, dun.
So, and I defer to the legal brain in the room, but right now in Canada, our copyright law, our law, does not have anything that explicitly talks about AI, right? Technology moves a lot faster than legislation. So because we don't yet have legislation for these protections, it becomes a big challenge. So as labor organizations, our role is to ensure that we protect our performers via our negotiation of collective agreements, right? So ACTRA's role is as, the union representing performers in recorded media across Canada. ACTRA is the largest organization of cultural workers in this country. We have 30,000 members from coast to coast to coast. 15,000 of them are at the ACTRA Toronto branch, which includes all of Ontario, but not Ottawa. So we, as an organization, are standing up for working artists. The average Ontario performer makes less than $20,000 per year from performance, right? So it is a very challenging, rewarding but challenging industry. Our members are precarious workers, so we need to be sure that there are protections in place. So ACTRA, one of our main points besides bargaining these collective agreements is advocacy. And so this is where we go to the government and we, file submissions on the Artificial Intelligence and Data Act, ADA, and we talk about things like this is how our members are going to be impacted by AI. We're not anti-creation, we're not anti-technology, we're pro-protection. So what ACTRA wants to see primarily is what we call the 3 C's: consent, compensation, and control. So consent means the performer understands and it is clear what they are signing and what they are agreeing to, right? So we're not anti-AI, it's just there has to be a framework in place because, again, until we have the laws in place, the unions are the ones protecting our members. But again, not everyone is a union member and not every production is a union production. So when it comes to consent, it's not just tick this box here. It has to be informed consent. There has to be explanation to what are you signing, right? So, we have something called, it's nil rights, so name, image, likeness, but that also includes voice, movement, personality, image. It's basically a performer, their face, their voice is their brand. So we want to make sure that their nil rights are protected. So, when they're consenting, that means there's a full understanding of where this data is being used and for what. So yes, I agree that, I, Jane Smith, in the film Sudbury Tales, agree for this.
See that movie.
I think it'd be awesome. Or Big Nickel Times, I don't know, either one. Consent and then compensation, right? So, unions, one of our biggest things that we do is negotiate collective agreements for the proper wages and working conditions for our members working in different types of media. So when we talk about compensation, it's like, again, if there's going to be a digital replica created or what have you, that they're properly paid for that. And then control. So this is a really big one, right? The control of their image, their likeness, their voice, their nil rights. It's not just their image that's being controlled, but we need to be sure that the data is protected. So if Jane Smith is being scanned and there's going to be a digital avatar of her for this film, the filmmaker or whoever has that data is not now uploading it elsewhere and now having Jane's image likeness out there in the world on other productions without her consent, right? So consent, compensation, control. Again, because we don't yet have legislation, this is why union agreements are so crucial, and we've seen a lot of success with, SAG-AFTRA, Writers Guild of America, Writers Guild of Canada, but it is something that unions are very concerned about, and until we have this in our collective agreements, it's something that we just need to be top of mind. But is anyone in this room a union member of some kind in unions? Amazing. So that's fantastic. So unions negotiate collective agreements, but these have a term of 3 years, right? So a good example, our film agreement was, a number of years ago, the 2019 to 2021 agreement. Well, what happened in 2020, right? So we had no language in our collective agreements about a worldwide catastrophe, a pandemic, right? So our language in our collective agreements didn't have that because, again, they're negotiated and then they have a lifetime of 3 years. So we need to be sure that as labor organizations, we're getting this language in now to protect performers and artists 3 years from now.
So it's hard to follow. You're what I refer to as a jailhouse lawyer.
Oh, excellent.
That sounds fun.
On my Law and Order
title of a movie,
Yeah.
based on a John Grisham novel, maybe. So, I think, legislation is slow like molasses, right? And we do need a top-down process, a top-down approach here to really legislate against the ills of AI and to allow humans to focus on maximizing the good uses of AI. So from a legislative perspective, we're getting there. It's really slow. The unions are on it. Thank God for that. Like they are leading the industry on the protections that are needed for performers, writers, et cetera, and generally creatives. But so legislatively, we are seeing, in Canada, in the Canadian Copyright Act, from an authorship, so this is not performance, but from an authorship perspective, we have seen clarification or interpretation of the Canadian Copyright Act that an author cannot be AI in the Canadian Copyright Act. So that interpretation of existing legislation has helped us in the face of AI to understand who is an author and who is not an author. So human beings can be authors. Companies can be authors. AI cannot. And then WGC, for example, the Writers Guild. So again, we're seeing, the unions move faster on this. The Writers Guild has said, okay, you can use, writers can use AI, but it can't take away from writers' credits, and nor can writers actually input into AI to enforce or strengthen AI. So I think that's really interesting, right? Because another concern, we'll get into this, but some of the ethical concerns around AI include biases and it being sort of an echo chamber for all the ills and the biases in the world, essentially, right? Like we're seeing in other medias, the use of AI, for example, in sifting through CVs or loan applications by banks or employment agencies when AI actually sifts through CVs and sorts through them in a way that indicates biases, right? So I think the WGC is on it, ACTRA is on it, And what we're seeing, and SAG is also on it, as we saw in the resolution of the strike last year, that digital replicas of performers can be used as long as they're being compensated for. But the issue of control is a big one, right? Because as the actors in this room know, that even pre-digital replicas, even pre-AI, your performance on camera, once it's done and it's out of your hands. You don't have any creative say or control over the finished product, over the film, right? Unless you're, like, not even if you're Anthony Hopkins, right? Like, the producers, or the directors will have final cut. And how your performance ends up in the final product is completely out of your hands once you send it out there into the universe, right? And so now that's even more magnified and even more problematic when they can use your digital replica. So it's your performance on camera plus whatever the hell they want to do to your actual replica. Do you really have control over it? Like, are you willing to, I mean, there's an issue of, okay, you can be compensated for it. As long as you're accepting the compensation for it, you kind of have to step aside and accept that you will not have control over the use of your name, image, and likeness, right? Like, you're essentially being bought out for the use of your name, image, and likeness. In that production, hopefully it's not beyond. So that goes to pre-AI. There's a concept in all contracts about a one-picture license, right? Most performers will negotiate this in their actor agreements, that their performances can be used in one production and not perpetually in anything. Flashbacks. Yeah, and not like for commercial products or to sort of market or brand products or to commercialize their name, image, or likeness. It's called a one production, a one picture license, right? So that's something that we'll continue to see in contracts, along with sort of in order to really protect name, image, and likeness, which is at the end of the day what's known as a publicity right, or the right to protect the commercialization of your name, image, and likeness and voice.
Amazing. I know there's a lot of information being thrown at us. I'm learning too. For someone who isn't a union performer, what are some things that they can do, or yet, hopefully they will all be members of ACTRA, but what are some things that they can do to protect their creativity and artist integrity in the meantime? So is that in terms of reaching out to ACTRA to see how to work with union performers as producers? Are the majority of us in the room producers, directors? Producer? We have one hand. Everyone else is not a filmmaker? Okay, there we go. Okay, that's sweet. Awesome. So what are some things, maybe I'll rephrase it, what are some things that producers can do who previously haven't had any affiliation to a union or may have never worked with an entertainment lawyer that they can do to protect themselves for starting? Because I know for me in the beginning, I didn't have the opportunity to work with an entertainment lawyer until a couple of years into my career, primarily due to budget constraints and all of that. So how can we best protect ourselves until we're able to do so?
I mean, I would say it's being informed and educated on what's currently happening. Like yesterday was, we just got this e-blast yesterday of that they've passed legislation in California. Hooray!
Yeah, sorry, I meant to get into that.
But just as an example,
in the U.S. they're on it.
The U.S.
faster than Canada.
But I think that it's worth understanding sort of the landscape of the entertainment sector, right? So for those who are producers, knowing what the CMPA, what their viewpoints are for other creatives, if you are in any other guilds or associations, because quite frankly, unions and guilds are doing a lot of lobbying about this, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're curious about, the viewpoint, and I would just say ACTRA's, obviously, yeah. But you can go in and read our submissions to the government, noting what we are. Great. Yeah, it's on our website. You can go to actratoronto.com/AI resources. We've got a ton of stuff. It's updated daily with articles and that kind of thing. So just really being aware of the concerns and sort of finding out what your responsibilities are as a producer. And I mean, it's always worth it, I'm definitely not a lawyer, but understanding all the nitty gritty. I know that contracts, usually you say contracts, let's talk about collective agreements and contracts, and people go, but cry. It's so crucial. It's so crucial to know, especially as producers, the producer is the employer. right? The producer is the one who is employing everybody on that set, pre, post, everything. And so you ultimately are responsible for creating a safe and respectful work environment. But ultimately, again, it's your name on the dotted line. So really having a good understanding of that. There are so many different resources for especially emerging filmmakers, different courses you can take. A lot of the unions and guilds. A really great resource, I just always have to shout this out, is the CBC, Cavco, CMPA One-Stop Business Workshop. I think there's 6 different seasons now. You can go and watch 20-minute panels about everything you ever need to know. So again, it's just educating yourself, because as the producer, ultimately, you are the one who's responsible for everything. So just keeping an eye out on that. But definitely go to actortoronto.com/AI resources. It's a good first step.
Yeah, so I do want to touch on the very recent new California legislation. So it's not federal, it's state specific, that Gavin Newsom just passed into law. And so that's definitely precedent setting. And I hope Canada follows suit very soon. And in fact, there are bills in the works to do so. But basically, this new California legislation says that a performer can get out of a vague contract, a pre-existing contract that's too vague about AI, that could potentially allow the producer to make and misuse an AI replica. So that's talking about pre-existing contracts. So that's law now, and as well, you cannot, it's illegal to make a digital replica of a diseased person without their estate's consent. Yeah. So again, at the crux of all of this is, and I know whenever I say legal terminology, everybody's eyeballs roll over. It's right of publicity is what it's at the crux of this, or name, image, and likeness. It is a legal right to protect the commercialization or the exploitation for commercial purposes of your name, image, and likeness rights. It's a property right at the end of the day, which varies a lot from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. First of all, whether you're common or civil law jurisdiction. So in Canada, we're common law jurisdiction other than Quebec. So I won't talk about that. That's my hometown. They're always different. But the rest of Canada is common law jurisdiction. And we don't, the right of publicity is something that's only in our common law. It's not in our legislation, right? But it is nonetheless a property right that is sort of being expanded with common law. And now we're seeing legislative efforts in the US that are essentially going to protect the right of publicity more, right? Which is, by the way, it doesn't just apply to celebrities. Everybody has a right to protect their name, image, and likeness for commercialization purposes, right? It's one thing to, end up in somebody's social media posts, right? But it's another thing if your image, if a deep fake of you is being made to advertise Dove soap all of a sudden and you're on TV without any consent or compensation. The chances of that happening to Halle Berry are higher than the chances of that happening to me, for sure. But
you never know.
But nonetheless, I like to think I have better skin than Halle Berry. But but nonetheless, this is at the end of the day, this is at the crux of it. This is the foundational legal concept, which is a property right, and we're seeing the right movement in legislation.
Amazing, and there's so many different arenas that AI is playing in. Obviously, something that I find really interesting. Flawless AI, they're a dubbing VFX company, and they're actually helping to reanimate performers' voices to kind of block the barrier between if people experience difficulty watching a foreign film with subtitles, the actors and performers will be reanimated so that their lip movements match the language that they're speaking in. And so it's kind of opened a can of worms, but also provided a really unique opportunity. So what are some challenges that you're both experiencing that are obviously not the fear-mongering, AI taking our jobs, robots running the world, that you're seeing that, maybe Divya, you take this question first, that you're seeing in legal contracts or from producers or from broadcasters in that arena when you're protecting a project? What are some of the challenges that you feel you have to fight for? Or, yeah.
So on a very basic level, when we're talking about vendor and customer agreements, so service agreements in the entertainment industry, right? We all know there's representations and warranties where, when you're a service provider or when you're the actual producer getting rights from a service provider, the individual actually creating the work product, whether it's as a service or original, they're representing that it's original material, right? That they have the rights to grant in the material. So if I'm a director being engaged by a producer on a film, in my director agreement, I would represent and warrant that everything I'm doing is original and that I have the rights to actually grant to the producer who has to ultimately own the copyright in the film. So flip this around, say I'm a writer or a director. I mean, literally, you can use ChatGPT or AI to maximize efficiencies in many roles in the entertainment industry as we're learning, right? So if I'm a writer and I'm using ChatGPT to write my script, and I'm granting ownership, I'm granting all rights in the script to the producer in an option purchase agreement or a WGC or non-union writers agreement. Like, I'm granting all rights, I'm representing that this is original material and that I have all the rights to grant. But ChatGPT, sweeps the internet, takes things from other existing copyright. We don't, it's now technology is slowly developing to show how and sort of what pieces it's taking from where. And it's very possible that I don't own all the material that I'm granting. And that if the production faces a lawsuit because I unintentionally ripped something off, right, in the process of using AI to write my script that's not really original anymore, right, that opens up a can of worms of litigation and potential, breach of copyright, or violation of copyright. So that's something to keep in mind, and I think we're all trying to figure out what that entails in the contracts. It's a risk, and we're going to probably see more sort of copyright issues or copyright lawsuits in that regard.
It's so fascinating to me because as a writer myself, I haven't used ChatGPT in that, to actually form a script, and to me, a year ago, I was really excited, thinking the kind of general idea was, you can get to a first draft sooner. And I was like, oh, that's great. And then I thought, well, then what does that mean for me as a storyteller? I'd rather AI come in to use AI to help me make a budget or to do my contracts. And, there's so many other things that I would like it to be used for. But hearing that, I feel like more impetus to not use AI to write scripts.
It's just, the representations become kind of useless, right? If we're not actually creating something original, or we just have to be we have to be very aware of that, whether you're on the production side or the creator side. And that also is something I truly believe, which is using AI to maximize efficiencies on things that, like budget making and scheduling and things that don't involve artistic authorship and sort of leave that to the humans. Artistry and authorship and creating art is, to me, and this is I'm gonna get very philosophical here, is it's an inherently human act. And very funny anecdote, actually, last night, after I watched Anora, and I was just hanging out with a bunch of 20-year-olds outside the theater at Silver City, and one of these kids, God love Gen Zers, I'm always fascinated. One of these kids happened to be a coder who's doing a degree in AI. So I was like, hey, can you write my presentation for tomorrow? So that
sure, no problem.
Really was I loved the coincidence of that. And he said something so mind-blowing, which that, again, was God bless Gen Zers. He's AI is actually demonstrating to the world what art would look like without the human soul.
Ooh, I just got a little goosebumps.
I wish I could take credit for that. This kid was 21.
Youth.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can fearmonger for a moment, though.
Oh no, just a moment.
I mean, I think that again, there can be positives and there are changes happening, and that's all great. But and something that you touched on a little bit earlier was we have a lot of concerns in the dubbing world. We have concerns for background performers, right? You know, like that's a sector that's going to be hugely impacted if everyone's just going to digital avatars and digital doubles, that kind of thing. But you know, I'd say one of the really big concerns is equality and equity, because these models are being trained on our culture as it is now, right? And all the biases and all of that, like you know, unconscious, conscious, whatever it is. And so that is going to have a really big impact on marginalized communities who already have fewer work opportunities anyway, right? So again, it's what type of world are they seeing? What is the system, you know, putting out there? So equality is a big concern. And of course, you know, and again, not to be a downer, such a beautiful day after a fun night last night, but you know, deep fakes. 96% of deep fakes are of women and are pornographic, and 99% of those are based on people who are already in the entertainment sector. We actually had, I know, and again, unfortunately, the fact that this has happened to Taylor Swift and other big name stars, and we don't want it to happen to anyone, but at least that brought it into the public consciousness, right? Like this can happen to, you know, deep fakes are happening now. And we've had instances. One of our members at Actor Toronto, Ellen Dubbin, she's a wonderful performer. She's a prolific voice actor, and she was in a video game, a AAA video game, and she voiced one of the characters. And she ended up getting, you know, her contacts letting her know, like, oh my goodness, Ellen, have you seen this? Someone had used her voice, the character's likeness from that game, and created deepfake pornographic content. And so this goes to the third issue, which is reputation, right? So for artists, you know, artists, their face, their voice, their nil is their brand, right? And we need to make sure that they are protected under copyright law, just like another brand, like McDonald's would be. You can't put the golden arches on something and be like, done! Like McDonald's will have something to say about that. We want performers in Canada and artists in Canada to have that same you know, copyright protection. So like as an example, let's say there's a performer who is the host of a children's television program, and their target audience is like 5 to 8-year-olds. And you know, they have very specific branding on their own social media, their websites, because again, they are in family entertainment, children's programming. You know, what happens to that performer if there's deepfake content made? That can really negatively impact their career, right? So again, we really want to, you know, not to be all doom and gloom, but these are the concerns that we do have to make sure that, again, you know, performers who already are precarious gig workers are not losing even more of their work or having their voice, their face, their bodies taken and made into other content, especially disturbing content. So that's, you know, a concern that we definitely have. But yeah, again, the tasks, great. Don't get rid of jobs, don't do bad things and steal people's likeness and have them do unseemly things.
As much as we joke about not wanting to be doom and gloom, I think it is really important to talk about both the positive and the negative sides of AI, because I think both of them are endless at this point. You know, we have the two extremes that can continue going on and on and on. Yeah, going back to question of what producers can do with budget constraints, what are some things that you are excited for producers to be able to utilize AI in a beneficial way? Like, is there anything that they, you know, to save time maybe? They could
Storyboarding.
What about the storyboard artists, though?
I mean, this is like not at all like, it doesn't impact what I do. Like I'm looking forward to using AI to maybe maximize our, like, reduce contract drafting time and therefore my clients' bills. So that's obviously happening. But from a production perspective, and you probably agree with this, right? One of the most fascinating uses is, I think, to, you know, make storyboarding a faster process. Yeah. So going from script to, you know, storyboarding and like the shot list and like all of that, right?
I think so too. It saves a lot of money in that arena. Teza, how about for you with performers? Is there anything that you're seeing producers do to kind of help speed the process along?
I don't really have, you know, I haven't experienced something where producers are like, hey, here's this thing that I'm doing that's great. But I do think, again, like, if we have a model in place consent, compensation, and control. For example, for dubbing, what would be cool is if a film is made in English and they really love their on-camera performers, and they want to then also, have it, dubbed into French or Dutch or German or what have you. As long as that performer is contracted properly and then paid for that, they can do that, right? So again, we don't want our voice performers to lose work, and that is a concern. But again, that's something where if the performer can be contracted properly, then
mic drop.
All the way.
We agree.
But so they're
Literally mic drop.
But again, I think that it can be used for tasks, and I think to make things easier from an accessibility standpoint. I'm sure there's tools that are really helpful. I myself don't personally use AI. Just because I'm a good writer. I don't want ChatGPT to show me up. I think I'm, talented at that. But, there are places for it. But, as an aside, in the creative industries that have been hit so hard in this decade, it has always been a challenge. To be an artist in Canada is it's a lot different than a lot of other sectors, right? Entertainment can be very difficult. It's challenging, it's rewarding, but it's challenging. And so, the fact that art is being, hey, let's train these amazing, huge, fantastic technologies to do all the things that humans like to do that are part of our humanity, like music and art and film. And it's like, can you, and again, there are other things I think that we can, AI as a tool would be great. We have so many things in our society that would be wonderful if we could train these models to think about, improving healthcare and education and that kind of thing. But, leaving the art to the artists.
Yeah,
right?
like grocery shopping. Like AI can do my grocery shopping to give me more time to be an actress. I'm just kidding.
There you go. And I think too, AI, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. We really need to do our best to, learn how to protect ourselves, but also just learn more about it. But also know that we've been using AI and different algorithms, for a long time now. So it's not necessarily like it's just boom. It's all of a sudden here. We're in a moment where it's really exploding. So something to be aware of, but not so petrified of, is something that I'm trying to tell myself. I'd love to open up for any Q&A, for any questions. Hi. Oh my gosh, so many. Yay. Hi. Do you want a mic? Oh, it's coming? Sorry.
Can I just, before we go to the
give it
next
to you?
question, I really wanted to say something about deepfakes and just clarify. Is my mic working?
Yes.
I broke it. To clarify that the distinction between a digital replica of somebody, an existing human being, a performer, versus a deepfake, you can do a deepfake of an existing person, but you could also do a deepfake that's a completely fictional creature that doesn't actually resemble anybody, right? So that's a very important distinction, because as legislation and the unions are legislating and ensuring that digital replicas of existing human beings are not being misused without consent, compensation, or control, what about something that's a completely fictional creature that doesn't resemble anybody? If that is actually the case, if a producer's using a replica, a deep fake like that to replace background actors to save costs, there's nothing preventing them from doing that, right? So, but at the end of the day, background actors are or is there?
Our background performers are extremely talented people, and I think it's really key as a creator. I mean, right now, AI is obviously advancing, but it's not at the level yet, I feel, that those performances of AI are on par with a human being, right? So that is the main benefit of when you're engaging professional performers, they are skilled in their craft, they know what they're doing, they can help build the world. So I feel like that is going to be, something that audiences appreciate, right? I mean, just look how you often see online people kind of ragging on bad AI imagery that people try to say is real, like a restaurant doing, here's a picture of our burger, and it's like, that's AI and it's bad, So I think
we're lucky that it's tacky to date.
Yes. So, I mean, again, I think that we can really depend on the fact that audiences want to see human beings, and again, we want to keep that work for performers instead of ones and zeros.
It shows the hard and soft law distinctions of trying to navigate this world, right? There's hard law, but then there's soft law of standards, industry standards, guidelines, FAQs, and union collective bargaining agreements, all that stuff that will inform practices. And hopefully we're all leaning towards the direction of I've seen incredible background performers. You know, they don't just, like, you know, I have many friends, by the way, who are principal actors who also do, you know, make a good amount of money doing background work when they don't have principal roles, right? So there's a lot of meaning to that, to what they do as background actors as well. It can't just be replaced by an AI or a bot or a deep fake.
For sure, and I think anyone, next time you watch a TV show or your favorite movie, really take a look at the background, because, and imagine if they weren't there. I'm telling you right now, the show will not be as interesting, exciting, full. You know, anyone who I think, I might eat my words in a year from now, and I hope I don't, but yeah, I don't want AI background. I don't. It makes the world less interesting. You know, I think we'll be able to see and we'll be able to spot it, you know, so.
It's not a reflection of our world, is it?
No,
like,
it's
our
not.
movie's meant to be a reflection of our world to some degree. Sorry, I want to open up to questions
coming
now.
to you. Yeah. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for the enlightenment. I've worked for about 25 years doing background and transportation in the industry, but I'm also a professional artist. And my concern is you have legislation protecting copyright, but there may not be teeth in that legislation for that's affordable. And I'll make my point. I produced a number of images. My name is my brand. I've been doing my art publishing limited edition prints. I've had a contract with major corporations for my images. One of them was a wallpaper company out of Cleveland, Ohio. They produce wallpaper borders from my images and wall murals, 54 inches high, 12 feet wide. I had one of my fans from Indiana send me a text, Mr. Drysdale, I saw your work in a Hallmark movie. I knew nothing about it, so I bought a copy of the Hallmark film. I watched it. My mural is substantial in the cafe scene throughout that film. I got no contact, no compensation, and no credit. And I contacted Hallmark, their PR person, did not get a response. And I tried to track down the production company that actually did the production. They no longer exist. Where do I stand?
That's a really great, I have some thoughts. Do you want to go first as our lawyer?
No, go for it.
Okay, so.
This is clearance. This is beyond AI now. This is clearance.
It becomes.
Traditional clearance issues, but yeah. Go ahead.
So a very good friend of mine has a bar restaurant in Collingwood. Very similarly, she was watching a movie that was very popular on Netflix, and realized that our teeny tiny bar in our tiny town of Collingwood was shown in the movie. And so she reached out and tried to connect with anyone within production, and without realizing it in the contract that she had signed with oh my gosh. When you sell your photos online?
Licensing?
Pardon? Stock. Thank
license.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. She had actually sold some of her photos to a stock image company. So I would go through your contracts, if you haven't already, with previous sales, even though it has nothing related to film. There might be something in there where they sold, your work without you knowing. Unfortunately, that was her experience, because we were all up in arms, and then we went through and found out that a deal she had made 3 years ago actually included some stock images from her bar. But it is absolutely infuriating and frustrating when we don't know. And did you reach out, like, in terms of, I know the production company doesn't exist anymore, but are you able to see if the producer's still active? Do you know if they're still producing other projects?
I don't know. I have the names, but
Yeah.
try and track people down.
Are they Canadian or American? Do you know?
That production was from Utah.
Okay.
The production was done in Utah, so it's all American.
But it was Hallmark?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely Hallmark.
So it would be Union. What would you do in this situation if a person came to you and needed legal help?
So generally, I want to say, like, I'm going to step back and say, generally speaking, from a clearance perspective, there's been a lot more discussion and awareness about this, about art in the background, and murals, street art, graffiti, art generally as it appears in the background, and it's very important to make the distinction between sort of documentary filmmaking and, you know, a dramatic production, like a, you know, so because the reality is in a doc, if there's a mural in the background, it's sort of in passing and it's not the focal point, it's not enhancing, it's not part of the set design, you know, an artist may have less of a claim. Whereas if it actually is intentionally in a dramatic production where there is set design, there are, you know, artists building the set and the background and everything, it's sort of like intentionally being used to increase the value of a scene, of a shot, right? The art is, like we've seen this over and over again, beautiful street art or murals or art in a dramatic production is intentionally used, whether original or licensed, to maximize the value of that shot, to make it more aesthetically beautiful or pleasing or interesting for the production. And so the idea is it should be paid for, right? That's why that's why productions have set designers essentially doing original work for production, so they don't have to deal with potential litigious issues after the fact. Or if they want to use something existing in the background, like going out and getting a license from the artist to do so. So that's sort of like the, you know, the gold standard, but of course not all productions abide by that gold standard.
Not all producers
Tattoos are the same.
Tattoos, exactly. And this is all new stuff, right, in terms of standards, because it was evident with some artists, you know, commencing claims against producers for the use of their tattoos or murals or art, that this became an issue, and clearance companies and basically insurers, you know, top-down effect in the industry, right? Insurance companies realized, okay, this is a potentially litigious issue, this is a potential copyright claim, you know, producers need to clear this, right? It becomes then it trickle-down effect, it becomes part of the clearance procedures that lawyers do for their productions. So when I'm on the production side and I'm watching a cut, like during the clearance procedures, I'm definitely flagging those kinds of things, being like, hey, was this cleared? Is this original by your art department, or was this licensed? And that includes tattoos, and you know that there was a famous case of, you know, Mike Tyson's tattoo artist, his tattoo that appears in The Hangover, right? There was litigation around that, and so the individuals with the deeper pockets, yes, they tend to dictate or inform for the rest of us, but because of litigations or claims like that, you know, it's helping artists in every realm.
Yeah. So I just want to pop in and say, like, you know, as creatives, you want to write your script, you want to go to camera, you want to make your film, you want to show it in festivals, and the creativity is amazing, but this is a business, right? So when we talk about things that sound kind of sleepy, like contracts and insurance and clearances, this is why it's so integral, right? You have to make sure that you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's, because there can be impacts down the line. And that's, again, why, you know, having professional organizations, having collective agreements, this is all very important. But I'm sorry that that happened to you. I had a friend who her friend was a photographer, and he said, can I take your photo? She said, sure. She ended up in ads for like soy milk. She ended up in Walmart. Like, people would take her photo from all over the world. Like, it was a Facebook meme for a while. Like, it was just like, she was in an article that was like, what people like versus don't like, and it was just, she was world famous because she did her friend a favor and was like, I'll sit for a photo for your portfolio. Never made a dime, right? So again, that's why you need to be understanding when you sign that, you know, what you are signing.
And we're going to get to the next question for sure, but I think I would say is some takeaways. Go through all the contracts that you've had, because maybe somewhere that you've sold your art to, one of the murals, there's a little tiny thing within that. And if there's not, you're looking at me with, I got it. But maybe we'll chat after and see if there's like a better follow through with finding the producers. Yes, hi. Yeah.
First of all, forgive me if you were being facetious about this, but I think it needs to be said, storyboarding is a very real job. The people in that particular field are already being unfairly treated and undercompensated, and there's a lot of reasons why artists in America are currently on strike that I encourage everyone to do their research on. I'm not going to ask for a follow-up on that, just going to say it outright. Different question regarding...
So I'm going to answer that. Point well taken. I think I was trying to suggest helping storyboard artists to do their work. I'm always taking the lens of using AI as a tool to help all of us do our jobs better.
And I agree with that. And
Not replacing people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and storyboard artists in general are given a lot of hats that they shouldn't wear because of the dubiousness of their job description. So I think starting at the core there, which is what the Animation Guild in particular is currently doing in America, is going to help down the line when it comes to using AI as a tool versus other things. Again, different topic altogether. I had a question regarding primarily actors, but this can apply to artists in general, where I didn't hear the discussion of opportunity being brought much in comparison to compensation and consent. Let's say that artists in their respective unions do agree and consent to their likenesses being used for projects. Every independent project they consent to saying, I want to be on this, I want to be in this. They expire, their estate agrees they want to be in this and that and the other thing. Let's say decades from now, right? That where there are so many more artists whose likenesses can be used from here till the heat death of the universe, that opens up maybe, that lessens the opportunities perhaps for other newer emerging artists to get in the field if there are AI generated ones whose likenesses can continue to be used well after they're done with their careers. And even if they do get paid for them, that doesn't really help innovate the industry and expand the talent pool. Do you have any comments on that?
I just want to say that, our performers, you don't just walk in the door and join ACTRA, right? You're a professional performer. ACTRA is the union representing professional performers. But all of our members, to be a performer, similar to be any artist in Canada, you might have 1 year where you book like maybe a 3-episode arc on a television series, you do a web series, you're on a commercial, and you might get 0 work the next year. Right? That's just the life of a performer. It's very precarious. It has a lot of ups and downs, and that's why it's so important to have the union negotiating proper wages and working conditions for those performers. But there's never a guarantee of work as a performer. The performer is not the employer, right? Ultimately, the performer auditions and does their best work, and they're chosen for the production. The producer is the employer. So, again, our concerns with AI is yes, that is taking a job. If you're creating a person out of thin air and sending that digitally non-human into a bunch of films, yes, that is absolutely taking work away from our 30,000 members from coast to coast to coast. So that is definitely a big concern of ours. I mean, ACTRA surveyed our members about AI, and 98% of them, 98% of our respondents were very concerned that they're going to be losing work due to AI. So that's why I think that having protections in place is going to be so important for a work sector, for a group of artists who are already making less than $20,000 a year on average in this province from specifically performance alone. The idea of losing that work for a background performer to be like, I'm not booking gigs because they're making these digital people, for voice performers who are not, getting work because they're using AI models. Like, again, this is why ACTRA is doing our very best, lobbying the government, getting involved, and right now, we are currently in the 3rd year of our independent production agreement. It expires at the end of December, so we are going into bargaining very soon, and the members across the country have let their union know AI is a big concern for them.
So I just want to touch, I think that's a very interesting point that you're making that I also think about quite a lot. I think what you're getting at is the change of like the old guard, right? And like, can you imagine, the example just came to my head, like Heath Ledger's, replica, the estate is sort of like signed off on, him in the exclusive use of his replica for any and all future Jokers in the gigantic franchise, and then Joaquin Phoenix wouldn't have had a job, But like that example could apply in many ways, in many realms, and I think the concern of AI is, of course, the stifling of creativity as well, right? And the sort of like reduction of creativity, reduction of newness, that echo chamber effect, which, if Ryan Reynolds' replica is used for any and all Deadpool, like the entire franchise before, like after his passing, there's no change of the old guard. If essentially the estate is going to get royalties in perpetuity and then preventing for sort of like new, fresh talent. And that's what it's all about, is fresh talent. And like we want to, I think, one of the challenges is going to be to ensure, or to sort of ensure that AI isn't being used to stifle creativity and the potential for fresh talent and the passing of, essentially the change of the old guard.
We do
And-
already have a bit of a direct parallel in that with Star Wars. Ewan McGregor
Exactly.
played Alec Guinness's character in the 2000s. Nowadays, we have Mark Hamill's face being put on an actor whose name we don't know and whose likeness is going to be a lot harder to find unless you do your homework.
Yeah.
I just think that,
exactly.
you know, in the realm of creating a more inclusive industry, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, we're doing so much work in that space. We need to be sure that the content that we're watching in Canada is reflective of the Canada that we live in. But if only the same 5 people are out there and their avatars are making all the content, what's that say for, you know, creating a more diverse and inclusive industry and entertainment
I might be
sector?
Delulu when I say this, but I also feel like, you know, if you're waiting for an opportunity, you're already behind. You know, so I've created my opportunities. I actually engaged myself as a performer to get my first actor credit. So I think you got to get out there and make your own opportunities. So I'm not really scared of that. Devin?
Oh, okay. I have a question, but it's okay, if audiences don't care if they're watching great art or a real performance, I feel like dollars will flow to things to satisfy a consumer. More so than the demands of, let's call it the legal framework or what's going on outside. And I think we've already seen that where I don't even know if you call them people, the things that are generated on Instagram that aren't actual people are getting millions of followers. There are
All the AI.
yeah.
accounts?
Like there's not even a real person there or a real thing. It's but consumers are consuming that. How, like, what is that even legal? Like, where are we sitting right now if an audience is choosing that over what a human creates?
Well, the market just does dictate where we go with art, and I think there's only so much that can be done by appealing to humanity and the taste of humanity. But if the taste of humanity goes down the shitter, so to speak, then, and we choose to follow accounts like that, then, like, yeah, you're right. Like, I don't know, actually. I would scratch my head in terms of how do you legislate against that. That's
Support
consumer
Canadian
choice.
culture, everybody. Like, it's important. It's not going to get made unless people are watching it, right?
And I think
That's a
someone
whole
has
other
to
topic.
own those accounts, right? You have to, a human has to be behind that AI account on Instagram. So that's a really good question. I wish we had a perfect answer for you, but I don't
There's
have
a
one right
horror
now.
film in there somewhere, I feel like. Eh? That's up for grabs. Anyone in this room, if you want to do a story.
Megan?
Well, yeah, okay, fair enough.
Okay. Yes. Hi.
Okay.
I'm tired.
All right. We have a question over here.
Okay. What is the app or URL that a director, actor, etc. could go to check out the legalese for particular information updates? For example, what is the current copyright regarding a particular thing?
I will let...
This is probably not the most professional, but I Google everything and then I research like crazy. So to find a first start, but you could also go to ACTRA. What was your wonderful link with AI resources?
ACTRAToronto.com/AI resources. If you just go to ACTRAToronto.com, on the main page, it's in the carousel. I think it's like the 5th item. It says AI resources. You can click there. So we update articles. We have links to our submissions to the federal government about that.